welcome back to Ink and Fig. My name is Alex, and today we are doing my June reading wrap-up. I got a lot of reading done this month, which I'm actually shocked by. I read more than I thought I was going to, and I'm very pleased about that because I got some really good reads in. So, let's talk about them. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is the one that I did not finish, and that is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker-Martin. I have started this. I am on page 31, and I'm about to start chapter 5. So far, this book is absolutely fantastic. I love how hard-hitting and on the nose the writing is, and like I find that interesting because on the nose writing usually doesn't catch me, but in this case, it's sort of like refreshingly blunt, if that makes any sense. The two characters so far that we've been introduced to, Beth and Fran, are just immediately jumping off the page. They feel so real, and so different and distinct from each other. And we've sort of hinted at what their relationship was prior to this apocalypse, and then now they're sort of hunting buddies slash allies going through this apocalypse. We have already faced the turfs once, which has been a wild ride. Cannot wait to continue with this. As I've mentioned in some of my vlogs, however, the reason that this has fallen back and that I'm not getting through it as quickly as I was hoping is because the subject matter is very heavy, and with the state of things at the moment, it's a lot to absorb. This is just a lot. So I'm trying to be gentle with myself while still trying to get through it. We're taking our time. We're enjoying the journey, and we're just taking it slowly. That said, I'm excited to finish it in July. Now, onto the books that I did finish. The very first book that I finished this month was Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. This one was a holdover from my May TBR. The card for that was The King of Swords, which asked me to read a book by a male author of color, and Norwegian Wood has been on my TBR probably 4 or 5 times over the course of the last 12 months, and I finally got to it, finally read it. What an interesting book. I really like Murakami for a lot of reasons. I like the way that his writing sort of flows, and you just sort of get like swept up in the tide of it, and like it's not big and hard-hitting and like, you know, not necessarily profound like a lot of other writing that I typically go for. It's a lot more just gentle and slice of life, and I really appreciate that. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned how our main character Toru kind of lets all of these women in his life happen to him. I feel like that's probably the best way to sum this up. Like, the book is very much just like a slice of, you know, male ennui, you know, coming of age, while muddling your way through your past trauma kind of situation. And he sort of finds his way through that trauma with the company of various female characters, mostly in sexual ways, but also sometimes not. It's a very interesting balance. So this was a very interesting book. I think overall I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars, for reasons sort of being that I don't think I was necessarily the intended audience, but I still got a lot of sort of relaxation and enjoyment out of reading it. I liked it. Okay, I'm gonna level with you. I lost the tarot card for this book, which is a problem in and of itself. But my next read was Caramo. I found the card for Caramo. It was the 10 of Pentacles by Caramo Brown, of Queer Eye fame. This book was honestly so much fun. The prompt for the card that I cannot remember, was to read a memoir. And I read, earlier this year, I read Tan France's memoir, Naturally Tan. And honestly, loved it. That book was also incredible. And I was like, you know, I just want to sit down and have that same sort of conversational feel with another one of the guys from Queer Eye, because honestly, these folks are absolutely lovely people. And I just want to, you know, hear about their lives in their own words. So cue me reading Caramo's, this time for my memoir prompt. And it was just such a moving, deeply raw but personal and honest account of his life and of the hard things that have happened in his life and how he got through that, and how he has taken that information from earlier in his life and become a better person with it. And I love, love, love that journey. This is the first book in a very long time that I have annotated. I do not think I have annotated a book since university, and that was a decade ago. This book had an awful lot to say, and I loved every minute of it. This, like, honestly, if you want just a nice personal experience and, like, also some insight on heavy real-world topics, high-key recommend this book. I gave this one 5 stars because it just felt so personal, so moving, and I really do feel like I had a conversation with him by reading this book, and that felt like a really special thing. So I will definitely be going to pick up the other 3 guys' books because I haven't read theirs yet, and I'm interested to see what they also have to say. For my next card, which was the Strength card, asked me to read a book with a predominantly female cast. I read If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This book might be my favorite book that I've read this year. It was so real. Like, I felt like I was talking to these women, even though they are all fictional. This is a piece of fiction. I felt like I was talking to all of the women in this book, and the way their lives came together and how they were coming of age and kind of falling apart while searching for perfection in their lives, whether that was through their appearance or through their job or through sort of the fantasies that they have about what life could or should look like. Like, I loved those journeys for them, and like, the writing was gorgeous. Oh my god, like, everything about this book was just absolutely fantastic. This book really moved me. I was just like rooting for every single one of these women to get exactly what they wanted out of life and to become better people and to find the happiness that they were all really looking for. And I think that sort of at the end, when all of their stories converged and everything kind of came together, I felt very satisfied. So if you are looking for a satisfying read with a lot of fabulous women that have a lot of very different viewpoints, absolutely give this book a read. So the book is set in Korea. It's about a bunch of Korean women who have various different life experiences and who are all looking for something to make their lives better. So we focus a lot on Korean room salons and on plastic surgery culture, which you can sort of tell by the title, If I Had Your Face. People sort of think, oh, well, it's sort of the grass is greener kind of situation. It's like, oh, well, if I looked like you, if I was as beautiful as you, you know, I could achieve this, that, and the other thing. And it's sort of about getting past that idea of perfection and like the, well, if only I had this, then I could be this, and getting sort of to the punchline while muddling your way through that middle ground. Very fascinating book. Needless to say, this was a 5 out of 5. Excellent, excellent book. Absolutely go pick this up. Go read it. It's fantastic. Your life will be better for having read this book. So my next book was for the Hierophant, which asked me to read a book that was recommended to me by Storygraph. So what I figured out when I went on Storygraph was that I needed to give it something with which to recommend me a thing. So, seeing as it was Pride Month, I stuck LGBTQ in the search bar, and it gave me Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez. I had heard of this book. The person that I heard about it from wasn't a huge fan, and I was like, you know what? It still sounds interesting. Let's give it a shot. And I will be honest, the first 3/4 of the book, I think I agree, it wasn't fabulous. It was a little bit on the nose in that way that YA is on the nose. Which is to say, not necessarily in a good or compelling way. For me, the beginning of the book was very much like that. I think the end, where things kind of came to a head, all of the main character's flaws came out, her bad decisions came out. She had to face the music in the second half of this book, and I felt it. I felt for her. I was like, I didn't really like her, and I was like, um, whatever. But then like it happened, and I was like, oh, honey, no, The main character, Darcy, runs an advice locker at her high school, and she's doing this all anonymously. She's taking money for it, and she's trying to, help advise her classmates in matters of love, even though she herself is colossally screwing up her love life with Brooke, who is the character on the end here. She is solicited by this guy, Broem, who needs to get his girlfriend back. And it's an enemies to friends kind of situation, so they like kind of hate each other, but then they learn more about each other and they become friends. Meanwhile, she continues to make poor life choices. He continues to be a closed-off asshole, and eventually, they have to get through these things. And I thought that was really where the book came into its own, where it had a lot of value. Particularly thinking of it from the point of view of like a younger teenage reader, right? Had a lot of flashbacks to my own high school life reading this. Because as I was sort of like thinking about this plot, I remembered, possibly because I repressed this, something very similar actually happened to me in high school as what happened to Brooke. So if you've read this and you know what happened to Brooke in this story, something very similar happened to me. I didn't know how to deal with it at the time, and it certainly didn't pan out the way that it panned out in this book, but like that was a really interesting angle for me to come at it from, to be like, oh, these moral decisions do affect people, and how do the affected people react? So I thought that was a really interesting thing, and without spoiling it, I don't necessarily agree with how Brooke handled it, although having also handled something similar myself, I don't necessarily know a better way to handle it because I didn't handle it particularly well either. Anyway, interesting talking point. This book, I'm coming out around sort of a 3.54 star area. It was pretty good. The ending absolutely saved it. But it wasn't stellar, and I think that it might be a me and YA thing, but also this other person whose video I watched also didn't like it. So maybe it's not just me. So I'm sticking with about a 3.5, and yeah, now I can finally take this back to the library, because I think this is due tomorrow, so #whoops. So then my last read for the month of June should have been Manhunt, but for the aforementioned reasons, that did not happen. I needed something softer, more escapey, a little bit less heavy for the time that we're going through at the moment. So I decided to pick up Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I recently got the King of Scars duology, and I really want to read it, but I understand that Nikolai Lantsov has a lot to do with that duology. I think that was what I heard, which means that I needed to know who he was in the first place. So that meant I had to pick up Siege and Storm. So now I have read this. I still have Rise and Ruin to get through, but I have faith in myself that I can do that now. Because this actually only took me like 4 or 5 days to get through. It was pretty good. I think, like, I've heard Leigh Bardugo kind of criticize this trilogy in other interviews, which sort of reflect a lot of my concerns with it. Very heteronormative, very white. But I mean, she recognizes that, and she definitely has been trying to fix that, I think. Particularly with how Six of Crows panned out. Like, I thought from my perspective, I thought that it was a pretty diverse book. Certainly more diverse than this in any case. So one of the things that I wanted to go into Siege and Storm and figure out was why so many people don't like Mao. And I think I get it. Like, unless something goes down in Rise and Ruin, which after the ending of this, I think he would be kind of an asshole to, like, make shit go to, but maybe that's why people hate him. I don't know. I haven't read Rise and Ruin. I might be spoiling it. I don't know. This is purely conjecture. So I thought that he was really acting reasonably, I guess, in this. Like, he's a person with feelings too, right? Like, yes, he's making her life a little bit difficult by being insistent on his own feelings and how he is being affected by all of the events in this book, but also, I think we need to keep in mind that these characters are teenagers. Like, I believe they're younger than the Crows in Six of Crows. I think both of these people are, like, 16. And I'm like, when you're 16, and the person that you have a crush on, or that you love, is actively trying to lead an army, that's kind of a tough thing to process, even if you yourself are a soldier, right? I thought he was being pretty true to age, I guess. No, he's not perfect. Neither is Alina. They both have their struggles. They both made their own choices in this book, and they both made their romantic relationship more difficult. That said, I think I sort of agree with the take that it seems to be making here, in that a romantic relationship kind of can't exist. Like, this is going to be a tragedy one way or another, right? You can't really be like honestly, you can't be the chosen one and also have a healthy love life. It just, it's not gonna work with the trope in a realistic way, you know? So, I don't know. Unless something really weird happens in Rise and Ruin, I think Mel's doing pretty okay. I don't think that realistically Alina can end up with anybody. And I find it kind of interesting. I'm not passing judgment on it one way or another, but I find it interesting that we have a third suitor now, basically. Or I guess there were 4, but I mean, you know, if you haven't read it, I'm not gonna say. But she has a lot of options, but also she needs to save the world. And, like, honestly, I think she's prioritizing quite well. So, this book, from me, gets a 4. The star that is missing is because, again, of that sort of very hetero whitewashed kind of situation. I am choosing to read these books with the actors in mind rather than visualizing my own interpretations of these characters. In part because that makes it more diverse in my head, but also because I just think they did a really good job casting everybody. So why not use their faces in my head? That's my question. So anyway, I liked this. I will move on to the last one, and then once this is done, I can finally get into King of Scars and I can get back to Nina. So that was everything that I read in June. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to my thoughts. If you've read any of these books, definitely tell me down below what you thought of them. I would love to hear some other takes, particularly on Norwegian Wood, because that was kind of a lot to get through, and I'm really interested to know what you thought of that book. You can follow me on all of my socials at Ink and Fig. I am most active on Instagram, so please come visit me over there. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're getting out new videos all the time. All kinds of interesting things are coming and in the works and are already up, so you have plenty to go and look at. There will be 2 fabulous videos that you may or may not have seen at the end of this one, so you can go check those out, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!